Hello everybody, this is Einar from Unity Cloud. This is our new website. And I feel very lucky to interview Howdie Mickoski. He has been a lecturer on Unity Center for many years. I always think of him as a very out-of-the-box speaker and out-of-the-box thinker. And now he has written a book called Falling for Truth. And I have read it, and it's out of the box, something I've never read before, and super interesting for everybody that's interested in self-development. Howdy. Your book, Falling for Truth, A Spiritual Death and Awakening. You have been writing this book for about 8 years. Yeah. And you have been writing some books before, and especially about, I read one about the Egyptian pyramids. And from 1997, you began to study the world of the ancient Egyptians and Mayans for wisdom that could help and be useful today. And I think that was the start point for this book. And you have been talking with the shamans, gurus all over the world, but at the same time you had your special way of thinking about your knowledge. So it's so fantastic, this book, so I recommend it for everybody. And my first question to you, Howdie, is why is spiritual searching important for you?
Well, I guess I'll first explain why the book took 8 years to actually write, and that was originally it was part of a process. It was being written for myself. It was like almost like my own personal little study guide as I was going along, that I would revise every 6 or 8 months. I would see that what I had written was now no longer, I felt was true and needed to be thrown in the garbage. So I mean, it went through 30 or 40 revisions, you might say, and it was only after about 4 or 5 years when I started seeing that this might actually be a book that could benefit other people. It took me to start thinking, what's actually being put in the book? Because once someone else starts to read it, once it's no longer just for me, there's a responsibility that the book will have some sort of value to another person. And given that what I'm saying in the book is so radical, so difficult for the normal spiritual seeker, it took a long time to figure out just how to word it. So the question was, what is spiritual seeking? Mm-hmm. I would say, if you answer it simply, it's that you choose to love truth over every other thing or person you could love.
That was a good one.
So that the need to know what's true about yourself, about reality, about death, about what life is, overrides everything else. That you can still have a love or a connection to all sorts of things while you're going on, but if a love or a need for truth, that you must have the truth, it'll never happen. That it has to take precedent over everything else. And the problem is most spiritual seekers or seeking is designed for the seeker. It's designed to generally make them feel better. Spiritual seeking begins for almost everybody because they don't feel good. They feel bad, either physically or mentally. They've had a difficult life. There's problems in their past. The world is scary and insane. And they need to take some of that away somehow. They need to feel calm and secure and safe. And so spiritual seeking begins in a way of, how can I be happy and safe? Which is, of course, that's a quest like any other quest. But the problem with that is once you find something that makes you happy or safe, well, you stop. The difference is if you need to know what's true, then even being happy or being comfortable won't end the work.
Is that what's driving you? You've been working with spiritual questions in 20 years. what is driving you? Is searching for the truth? Is that something that's driving you?
Yeah, I didn't know that's what it was. Right. It was more of a. At first, it was, of course, a reaction to how can I make my life better like everyone else. It all starts in some sort of personal pain, some sort of personal traumas in your life that you're trying to overcome, or in my case, seeing like how the world really operates. I had a girlfriend who was murdered when I was about 22 or 23. So right away, when you have an experience like that, you start wondering, how is the world actually structured? Because the normal presentation of the world doesn't make sense. And even once you start trying to hold on to any kind of religious idea, well, that's just another piece of hope that says don't think about anything and everything is fine, just follow along. And right from these experiences, something began to say, I think there's an underlying foundation to what this place is and how it works. How do you find it? Even though I didn't know I was doing that was there, and it's kind of just continued. This need to know what's. Of course, the real need is to know who you are, because generally people don't know who they are. You think you do. You think you're your name and you're born here and you live like this and you like this and you have this personality and you do these things, but when you start looking deeper, when you go looking for something tangible, there's nothing there. I think that's the scary point. As children, every child looks inside at some point and they see nothing. They look for that self and they find nothing. They find an emptiness, and that's not ever being told, oh, emptiness might be what you are. You might be empty. You might be actually stepping into yourself. It's presented as something scary, and so we find something to fill the emptiness, whatever that is, right? And so the difference is what happens when you decide to fall into the emptiness, and I like that term, fall into the emptiness. If you fall into the emptiness, what happens? So that's, if I had to describe it, that's how I would describe my seeking for truth.
So you're saying if emptiness is the real thing, then it's no rules.
Well, if you actually fall into emptiness, or if emptiness descends on you, or we're using emptiness, that's a Buddhist term, but you can use void, you can use absolute, you can use nothingness, you can use whatever. There's nothing there. There's actually nothing, but in the nothing is the potential spark of everything. So it's something the mind can't grasp, and in fact can't experience. So if someone has had the experience of emptiness, they can never possibly describe the experience, because to describe the experience, then you have to have had an experience, which it's not. It's like blacking out. It'd be like going into a coma for a while and then coming out of it and kind of saying, I've been in a coma for a while, and you don't really have experience of the coma, but something in you has some new understanding. That's kind of what it's like. That's the best way I can describe it.
So you have intuition about something.
Yeah, there's certain things all of a sudden become known, even though you don't know how you know them, and you don't know why you know it's probably true, because you can't say it's guaranteed true at that point. You just feel something's probably true, and then you have to sort of go backwards and begin studying that area to see, is what you feel actually true, or is it just some garbage I'm making up in my mind, which you find a lot of that, of course. But some of those things that would come out of such an experience, you find later as being, oh yeah, that is actually true.
Is that what you experienced in this the river? In the book you told about you had some kind of education or enlightenment when you almost drowned or something in the river. Right. Is this what you experienced?
Yeah, in a nutshell, when I fell into this canyon and kind of knew I wasn't going to be able to get out, that the river current was just too hard, and it was heading to a series of the largest waterfall in Canada. So it wasn't just in a river. I was in a river ready to go over a waterfall.
Oh, wow.
And so it was in the moment of the recognizing that I'm dying, that this will be my death, everything stopped. So everything that I would classify myself as me ceased. No thought, no experience, no memory, no hopes, no fears, no nothing. It was all gone. But what was left in that moment was like an awareness. There was now going to be an awareness of watching the death of the character, and that was the big shift. Was the thing in the river is not me. I'm not the thing here.
Wow.
Right. This is not me. This is a character in a movie. It's a character in a dream, and it's a character that I believed to be me for a long time, but me is actually something else. And in that recognition of this is not me came this microsecond of incredible, almost information that would come in, almost like, I call it a download. It was like a computer download. It was like putting a stick in your machine and just firing off thousands of files. And but afterwards, of course, I did get out of the canyon. I didn't actually go over the waterfall. There was a very strange way to get out, which you can, if you read the book, you can see how that happened. But it's not like all of a sudden I had access to all these files that have been downloaded. They're there. They're in the system somehow. But it's taking a long time to access what's in the files. So that would be the way I would describe it. It's almost, I've had a lot of people, they use a similar terminology, that it's like a download has happened into their computer system, but they can't access it all instantaneously, and maybe you can never access it all.
But it's still there someplace.
I feel that it's there, yeah. I feel that it's there, and I feel sometimes there's a great pressure almost. There's like a feeling of pushing on my form, because it's like, here you have all of this stuff that's been given to you, but you're not accessing it, you're not doing anything with it, but if you go look for it, you can't find it. If you don't look for it, some of them starts to show up. So it's a very weird thing. The more you try, the more effort you put into the looking, the more you get blocked, at least me, get blocked from seeing what's there. The more I kind of just don't pay much attention, something happens. A similar thing happened, like we were talking about this painting that's behind us. I don't know if it's in the frame or not, but this painting of the Annunciation from Florence. And it was this painting and a few others, the Annunciation by Da Vinci and a few others, I spent hours staring at when I was in Florence. That when I came back here after the week, there was, I think, an explosion of one of these downloaded files. And all of a sudden I got information and knowledge about something that I had never thought about before, and I started writing a new book, which another one just came out recently. But it's sort of like that. Something, without looking for it, forces one of these files to open, and then it's just up to my awareness. Will I accept what's coming, or am I going to block it? Do I want to look at it, or do I want to not look at it? And you have to be really open then to say, okay, I'll let it in. It might be scary, but I'm going to let it in.
Is that a little bit about what happens when you're channeling, or when you write a new book? If you write a new book without thinking too much, just some people just write it down. They say the information comes from some place, and they just write it down. Is that from this special place?
Similar. It's one of the things that nothingness shows you. If you have an experience of nothing or no self, is that there is a place where manifestation comes from. Everything that could be like this is just a simple, this world is very complex, but it's just a manifestation, right? It's just it's a computer reality, basically. And it all comes from one source. And if you can tap into the source, you can literally manifest anything, because everything is in the source. The problem is that people think they want to try to reach the source so that they can get anything they want. So it's generally, and that's big on the spiritual path. The Secret was sort of that number one book that sort of tapped into the greed of the human being. If you just read this book and pay the $30 to get it, then you can get anything you want by thinking about it. And then people would think, and nothing happened. Or they get little tiny things here and there, and they'd either discard the thing as a whole, or they would spend more time trying to get what they want, as opposed to stepping back and just saying, okay, there's obviously some sort of correlation between thoughts and manifestation and reality. Why don't I learn what that is? Not so much because I want to do anything with it, just because I want to know. And once you know how manifestation happens, then you can step back and decide if there's anything you want to manifest or not. Because that's a weird thing. The more you know about how manifestation happens, the less you want to manifest, the less you want to change anything.
Then we come into, one of my questions was about belief. Does that fit in here? Is that a little bit how you manifest this to really, when you really believe something?
It's tricky because the answer is yes and no. In one sense, like if you're working in the material world, on one sense, if you're for example, if you're a really good healer, and there are some really good healers out there, there's a lot of very bad ones, but there's a few real good ones. Generally, the real good ones have such a belief, not only in what we'll call their practices, right? It's not a belief in them, it's a belief in the, we'll almost call it like the ceremony they're doing, but it's to create the belief in the patient that the healing can happen. That's a huge part of real healing, is that if the patient believes it can happen, that's 70% of the work.
Yes.
The rest of it sort of comes along. So that's the one side of a belief working with reality. On the other side of it, though, it's the recognition that if you have a belief, you're blocking reality. Because a belief is just an idea. It's a box of concepts. And so as soon as you try to make a particular belief or something happen, it means you're having a box. So I know you're going to ask about prayer later on, so I'll answer that question now because it fits. And that is the way the Native Indians, because I spent a lot of time with many Native medicine men back in Canada in their sweat lodges and learning how they healed and how they pray, which was it was an incredible thing to experience because they pray so differently than most everybody prays, which would be, my sister is sick, please make her well. Or please fix her. That would be the prayer. And so the prayer right away has a box of what you're asking for. The Native Indians instead, they say thank you. They don't ask for anything. They would say, thank you for the help that has come to my sister. So first of all, by saying thank you, they've acknowledged it's already happened. They're not asking for it, it's already occurred. And in the second part, by saying thank you, and by leaving it sort of very open-ended, they've not created a box for what's supposed to happen. They didn't even say that my sister gets healed. They would just say help. Because they may feel that, maybe they feel that the illness or the problem is actually important for the sister, and so the sister needs the illness for a while in order to reach the knowledge that they're going to get later on. And so technically to take it away now even would lose the power that comes later. So they're already acknowledging that they're saying thank you for what they're asking for. They know it's going to come. And they step back and allow, I might say, the manifestation of the universe to show what that actually is.
Yes.
So it's an incredible way of how they work. It happened again with another medicine man. We had given a prayer for something. I don't remember what I'd been giving a prayer for, but when we put the tobacco, they leave tobacco often with a tree in the forest as a way of saying thank you. And I remember when I left the tobacco and started walking out of the forest with him, he just said, now you don't think about it ever again, because it's done. I was like, what do you mean it's done? Well, it's done. You gave the prayer, you gave your offering, don't think about it anymore. So it was also this realization of this different level of prayer, which links into belief, but it's not even a level of belief because they stop thinking about it. They actually stop. So it's fascinating to watch it happen. Yeah.
Fantastic. Another thing,
but then I should again add a piece to this, is that again, however, once you've seen an absolute reality, once you've seen that you and the world don't exist at all, then wanting something is also a form of egoic attempting to fix the dream to your particular way of being, right? There's a famous saying that once you know the truth, you don't want to change anything. Because bizarrely, the way everything is in the world is exactly how you created it. All the insanity is, for some reason, actual created insanity, and you're trying to change anything. You're trying to, in a sense, say God is wrong. God made a mistake. Something is wrong in this place, and I'm the one who needs to fix it. Me. I'm the one who's going to fix the problem. And you see this constantly. It doesn't matter what the problem is. The problem changes from person to person, city to city, country to country, and globally. Right now, there's a brand new problem that everyone's trying to solve, and the world's going to end, and we need to all fix it. And then in 5 years, it'll be something else. As opposed to, what if you just step back and see reality in a totally different way? Then you're comfortable with not necessarily altering too much, very little small things in your own little tiny world maybe, and even then it's slight. Because you start to say, I don't know enough to know that it actually does need to change. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means I don't like it. And that's very hard for the average person, and particularly for the average spiritual seeker to think like, because again, we're back to what we talked about at the beginning. They're in it because they don't like something and they want to fix it. And now here's somebody telling them, maybe you don't need to fix anything. You just need to see whatever's happening differently.
Then what you're talking about really is that the universe puts problems on you or world for a reason.
Yeah, the reason might just be it likes problems. It might not be, I'm having a problem, there's something I need to understand or overcome or get better. It might just be the universe is fucking insane. And so the universe itself, this particular reality, is nuts. And so it just likes insanity. I'm not saying that's true or not. I'm just saying that's a possibility that nobody thinks about. Again, the thought, it's supposed to be a certain way, usually happy, nice, joyful, whatever, but we don't have proof that that's true. Actually, our experience tells us the opposite, that the places of peace or calm or relaxation are almost like, how would I describe? Almost like a plateau or a space, or a good way to describe it is like the idea of spiraling into a labyrinth. It's hard work to go through the labyrinth, but once you get to the center, it's kind of peaceful. This part is over. I can take a break. It's nice. But then you got to walk back out again. And one of the tricks is most of the people who even get that way, they spiral in, they get there, but they reach the safe point and they forget, you've got to spiral back out. You got to go back. All the stuff you saw when you were going in, you got to spiral out and go see all of it one more time in order that you can see it, you might say, from both sides of duality. Or that you can see it from in the dream and out of the dream. You can see it from a self and a no self. And just spiraling one way to reach a safe point, while nice, is not the full story. And that's why most books and most teachers and most anything you go see doesn't talk much about challenge and mess and difficulty and hardship and confusion and suffering, because they've made it halfway. They did make it probably halfway in the labyrinth, but they didn't come back out again. And that's what I hope the book will get people to start really contemplating is how big of a journey this really is to know yourself, how big of a journey it really is to go within and get these answers, and that it's not an easy process.
And then we get to why is that important? If it's nothingness out there, why do we have to go through this process? Why can't we just live a life having a nice time, partying,
And technically the answer is sure, why not? I mean, it's a dream, right? So why not have a good dream?
Yes.
The problem is, for some people, no matter what they try, the dream stops being fun. The dream starts becoming a nightmare. Either it's because of external forces pushing on them, it's things that are out of their control, it's mistakes they've made, or it's something within them that's just can't possibly grab the same happiness everyone's getting. Or some people I know, they feel like what's the word? They feel like an imposter in the world. They feel like you're real. I see you, you're a real person, but I'm not. Something is not right with me. And so no matter what happens in their world, no matter how good their job is, how nice their spouse is, how perfect their kids are, how great the dog is, they never feel comfortable. Something with it. So all of this stuff begins because the thing known as you can't keep playing in the dream anymore. It needs to it needs to look for something else.
Something's pushing.
Something is pushing you without kind of it being you. So generally, as long as the dream is good and happy, this sort of stuff has no interest to a person. Why would it? I mean, why would you want to seek to learn about nothingness or death or what occurs after that, or if life is great?
Yeah.
You're not going to search. But what's interesting is most of the people I've heard of who have had a great life and then die screaming.
One more time, if people have...
When the better life a person has had, or the smoother life a person's had, the more fear comes when they die. The more they scream at death, the more they don't go peacefully. It's terrifying. Because of course, if all you're looking at is life, that means you're not examining death. And death is going to come. Guaranteed. 100% money back guarantee. We're all going to die. And the problem is, if you haven't spent any time considering it, inspecting it, trying to really understand it, of course, when it comes, it's going to be terrifying. But if you've spent time, because the dream has gotten so, the nightmare has started to come, it's no longer a fun dream, one of the things you're having to look at is death. Why am I here? Why was I born? What's going to happen when I die? The fear towards death starts to change. And death becomes less of a fearful thing, it becomes more of another thing to examine, another thing to look at, another thing to want to know. And so it changes that moment of death. Even if you don't have an answer, your moment of death will be different, just because you've taken time to explore it.
Thank you for this first half hour.
Okay.
I think my camera...
That's amazing. That's been a half an hour, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Irene said it was half an hour.
I trust it.
Okay. We're gonna make one more video, half an hour video maybe, and we'll just continue with the questions, and maybe we have to continue more with death and awakening. So the next video will come out within maybe in January, I hope. So we'll cut it out now. Thank you very much for this first video.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate it.